All right, Mr. Chairman, we have the full select board. So
Okay. All right, are we all set, everyone? Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 38 and 20, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order on imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Select Board will be conducted via remote participation. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch an open session portion of the meeting may do so by viewing on Dalton Community TV on channel 1301 or via the Zoom link that was on our agenda. Unless you were me, I couldn't get on. Okay. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the open session portion of the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay. Those who are able, please stand for the pledge. And John Boyle, will you please lead us in the pledge, sir?
Sure. Thank you, Matt. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, and liberty for all.
And justice for all.
Okay, Brittany is not here tonight, so I will do the roll call. Mr. Boyle.
Yes.
Mr. Stroud.
yes,
Mr. Esco.
Here.
Mr. Divers.
here.
Interim Town Manager Sandy Albano.
Here.
And Bob Bishop here. Okay. First of all, before we start anything, I really would like to reach out to the search committee. The members were Sandy Albano, Jeff Noble, John Kelly, Louisa Horst, and Chairman Steve Sears. I feel they did an outstanding job whittling through all these resumes, and they got us to the final three, and I can't thank them enough for their time and efforts. And what we'll do now is we'll go to the interview section. Joe has got us a little schedule here, which is good. Does everybody have their schedule?
To be version 2 of the question document.
And is Miss Susan Carmel on? Yep. Or are we too early?
No, she's here, Mr. Chairman. No.
Okay.
Susan, can you hear us okay, Susan?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yeah.
Great.
Okay, just before we start, I'd like to say one more thing. Thank you all for your patience, and if we got here, it's like, yes, this is good. Now we can see the end of the road here. Okay, Susan, we have got you here. Good to meet you. I'm sorry we have to do this by Zoom. We felt it's best for everybody's safety and health-wise, so we had to do it by Zoom, and again, I apologize.
Completely understandable.
Okay, are you all set, Susan?
I am.
Okay, could you take 2 to 3 minutes for an opening statement? Anything you want to say or tell us about yourself?
Sure. First off, I want to thank you for having me here and for the opportunity to interview in front of you. So good evening, everyone. Just a little bit about myself. I am a lifelong resident of Berkshire County, born and raised here. I started my municipal career right out of college for the town of Lenox. For 4 years, I was the town accountant. At the time, and still at this time, career advancement has always been important to me. I left Lenox to go into the corporate world. During that time, while I was working full-time, I earned my Master's of Business Administration, my MBA. And then probably about 10 years later, I ended up falling back into municipal government. I ended up working for the city of Pittsfield for 11 years. I realized it was my calling. I have a true passion for it. And I started as the town accountant for 3 years. I'm sorry, as the city accountant and was promoted to finance director and held that role for 8 years. And now for the past 3 years, I've been in Great Barrington, heading into my 4th year as the finance director. So I absolutely love working in municipal government. Very passionate about what I do. Outside of work, I am very active in my community. Well, I guess I could say pre-pandemic, I was fairly active in my community. I'm a member of UNICO and have been for many years. And I'm active both in Pittsfield and in Great Barrington.
All right, thank you. I just need to talk to the guys 1 second. I forgot to ask them something. Guys, when it's your turn to ask questions, could you please identify yourself? Okay? All right. My next question, Susan, is what attracted you to the position of Dalton Town Manager?
Well, as I had stated a few minutes ago, career advancement has always been important to me. Dalton is a very well-run, financially stable, close-knit community. Berkshire County is my home. You know, I've devoted my whole municipal career to the area that I love. And it's a great fit, and it's the right time for me to take the next step in my career.
Okay. Just making some notes. Okay. What qualities and experience do you have that would convince us that you would be successful as a Dalton Town Manager?
Taking them out of order. Well, I feel I bring a lot to the table. As the finance director for both Pittsfield and Great Barrington, you know, I interacted with all department heads at all departments. I know that, you know, I know how all departments are run. You know, that's a unique thing with being the finance director. I also have very strong leadership skills. I led a team of 6 managers in Pittsfield and 19 staff. I'm very passionate about municipal government. I believe in integrity and transparency. As I stated, I am community oriented. Specifically, I, you know, have the human resources component. You know, I was very active in collective bargaining negotiations, hiring. I'm just, you know, I love to help people out, and I just really, you know, what's important to me in advancing my career is, you know, I like to make a difference and to be part of a community.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, Joe, you're up.
Great, thank you. Hi, Susan, good evening. My name is Joe Diver, and I'm the vice chair of the select board, and day job is working over at Bay State Health, leading their digital health strategy. So I've been on the board for a little bit over a year now. So thanks for joining us this evening. So the first question I have is, describe your experience in managing town budgets, capital projects, and include stories about project bidding experience in that as well.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm sure you can imagine, obviously that's mostly my role that I do play. I have extensive background in both managing budgets and capital projects. I have, gosh, over 10 years experience of preparing the budget from start to finish, presenting the budget in front of Select Board, Finance Committee, City Council in Pittsfield. It's actually what I love to do the most, is preparing the budget in my current position. I take a lot of pride in it. I actually prepare the whole budget book and put it into the final presentation format. I also speak to it at town meeting as well, and answering all the questions and presenting it. I've had, you know, I've gone through many difficult years of budgets, anywhere from 9 seat cuts, level funded, level service, 5% reduction budgets, and obviously currently during a pandemic. And the same with capital budgets, anywhere from 2 million to 10 million of capital budgets, 5-year capital planning. You know, I've been involved in that as well. And with capital, as everybody is aware, it's one of the most difficult decisions because there's always a lot of needs, and you know, you only have so much you can afford. And you know, what always has to be remembered is prioritizing, and that down the road we have to pay for, and what the cost impact is down the road. So that's really one of the areas that I always try to bring home when I am presenting the budget and, trying to with the town manager, make decisions about what we can afford during the current year.
Great, thank you. Next question is, what is your experience in developing and executing a master plan? How do you coordinate the resources on that master plan?
Well, so I haven't had any direct involvement with the master plan. I'm very aware of what the master plan is, both when I was with the city of Pittsfield and what Great Barrington's master plan is. And I think that every department in the role that they play, it always is striving towards, what you contributes to the master plan of the town. I feel that both my background with, the financing and, overseeing the finances, the operating budget, the capital borrowing, all contributes to that master plan. And collaborating with everybody, it's always a team effort. It's, transparency and valuing everybody's input and working together as a team.
Great, thank you. And last question in my segment here is, please describe your approach to working with local, state, and federal agencies to augment town resources required to achieve goals. And think of that in the kind of context of what is the strategy to apply for grants to offset those resource requirements.
Sure. So I work very closely with my Department of Revenue representatives. I've worked with many state and federal agencies on the level of the financial side of things, when, we're trying to plan the budget or when state aid cuts have come in and, reaching out to them and trying to understand, what's going on and, trying to work with them to, one of the things was our veterans benefits were cut last year. And, because I have a contact at the state, I reached out and talked to them about and defended our position and was able to get that, back increased. I have well-established relationships, partnerships with many levels of state officials, the state representatives, a couple of the state senators. Because of my years in Pittsfield and Lennox, actually, I've known them for many years. I'm never afraid to reach out to anyone new. I'm very friendly and outgoing, and I think establishing those, building that rapport and establishing it and building that connection really goes a long way with, when you are looking for applying for grants and being able to defend and state your cause of, why the town of Dalton should receive that grant.
Great, thank you. The next segment of questions will come from Mr. Boyle.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Good evening, Ms. Carmel, and welcome to Dalton, even if it's only a Zoom meeting. It's the same as your being here as far as I'm concerned, and we appreciate it. Okay, first question I would have for you is, describe your approach to managing staff and department heads. What practices have you put in place to ensure accountability?
Sure. So obviously, I feel like I'm probably repeating a few things, but certainly as a finance director, you interact with every department. So I'm not just managing my own staff, I'm managing department heads. It's the unique aspect of being whether the accountant or the finance director. When managing my own staff, I'm inclusive. I believe we're all part of a team. You really are only, you're as good as your people. I challenge them to think outside the box. I encourage them to push themselves and to be able to, to give them their best self. But I also think that listening and making them feel valued is so key as well. So communication is very, very, very important. I like to lead by example as well. In regards to the role with department heads and from my position, accountability is absolutely the main focus when you are the chief financial officer. So trying to, sometimes you have to make very tough decisions. You're not always the favorite person with the department heads when you are in that role, but you set standards, you set policies and procedures, and you hold them accountable once you have established, setting deadlines, and keeping people to those tasks. They know what is expected of them. But I even when I have to work with a department head and I can't pay a particular invoice, I try to work with them and offer them, hopefully a solution and how we can work at it. So it goes both ways with having to make the difficult decisions when you need to, but also being there to try to help them as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gotta find where I am here. Describe your current role with labor relations and collective bargaining. And just add on for myself, could you be specific? How many unions, for instance, in the city of Pittsfield, did you work with or assist in negotiations? And how many members were there in these unions? Both in Great Barrington and Pittsfield.
Okay, sure. So in Pittsfield, there were 9 unions. There are 9 unions. As far as the size, the largest, right, that's a tough one. So the police department would have been approximately 100 employees. The fire department was, I believe, in the 80s. We had a collective bargaining agreement for administrative and support staff, and I would say that was probably 50 members. That one I'm trying to remember back. We had a library union, a little smaller, maybe 15. Dispatchers, I feel like I'm being quizzed on this and trying to remember. I believe the dispatchers were probably 9 employees. I'm sure that I have not gone through 9 unions, but
that's more than adequate. We just wanted to get a scope of the type and the size of unions you've been assisting in negotiations with.
absolutely.
That's very good. And you said the small one was 15. That's like our largest one. So
But it was quite a culture shock. Sorry.
Oh, I just had one follow-up question.
Sure.
Did you have any negotiations with any contracted employees? For instance, in Dalton, we have a contracted sergeant of police who has a separate contract, and the town road boss and the town foreman, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Did you participate in any contracts with individuals that had employment contracts with the town?
Not directly, but I am very familiar with them because actually I just recently finished up being a volunteer member of the police search committee in Great Barrington. I sat on that committee. We do have in Great Barrington, our sergeants have a contract as well as our chief. So, I am very familiar with them. I have not, sat in on direct negotiations.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I pass the baton, Joe.
Go over to Mark. Yeah.
Susan, it's Mark Strout. I've been on the board about 5.5 years. And what I want to talk to you about, and I'm actually glad I got these questions because it's important to me, and what I want to say is, I'm going to break it down into, there's 3 parts of this question. I want to break them down individually. Is that the residents, we're in a unique position when you work for a town, is that the residents are not only the customers, but they're also the ultimate bosses. We all answer to them. So the first part of the question is, what is your philosophy and approach in communicating with the town residents?
So my philosophy has always been that I always have an open door. I encourage anyone to ask me questions. Many a times with the city of Pittsfield, I frequently spoke at city council meetings. Actually, probably 75 to 80% of the time I was speaking at a city council meeting, and would be, whether someone asked me a question before the meeting started. I've been stopped in the hallways and on the streets. I always encourage it. I always take the time to listen and to be able to provide whatever answers I can. On a smaller level, I'm a big believer, whether it's a city or a town. I mean, you're absolutely right. The residents are our bosses, without a doubt. The citizens are our bosses, and that's how I look at it when I'm overseeing the finances as well too. But if I see someone walking down the hall and they're trying to find an office, I will stop and assist them. So I always like to go above and beyond. I always, everybody is valued, and take the time and explain it and be transparent.
The second part of this question actually goes right into what you had just said, and how do you respond to individual requests?
Sure. So, whether it's email, telephone, or again, someone grabbing me on the side of, at a meeting or something. If I'm unable to answer the question at that time, I certainly will let them know that I will get back to them. And I like to pride myself on getting back to them within 24 hours. I think it's important that, that they're a priority and that they're responded to in a very timely manner, so.
I think a lot of times people, even if they don't like the answer, they want to at least be heard and they want a answer. So
Correct.
It's important, and I do like when you say within 24 hours, because that's something I had brought up to the board recently about responding back to phone calls and stuff within 24 hours. The second question is, how do you communicate with elected town officials and appointed committee volunteers?
Sure. So, again, I use that same philosophy. I prided myself in Pittsfield with working with the city councilors. They're a priority. Elected officials, as well as town residents, are a priority. You respond in a timely manner. You build a relationship. I have a great relationship with the Select Board and Finance Committee in Great Barrington. I had a great partnership and working relationship with the City Council in Pittsfield. I've always prided myself on taking the time to, answer any questions they may have. If they stop in, unexpectedly in your office and want your time, you make the time for them and you try to get back to them and try to give them, the answer. Again, if I'm unable to provide an answer immediately, I, will always be responsive and say, I'll get back to you as soon as I can with that. Let me look into it. But, I always value and respect their time. In that they have devoted, they're volunteering for these positions.
Thank you, Susie.
Moving to Dan Esco.
Hi, Susan. Thank you for sitting down with us tonight on this Zoom interview. I've been on the board for all of 6.5 months, but I've been a town resident for over 12 years. I'm going to jump right in here. What core values do you rely on when facing difficult professional decisions on the job? And if you could please give an example or two.
Sure. That was a very thought-provoking question when asked that from the search committee. I really took a lot of time to think that one over. And I have to say, your core values are who you are. I believe my core values are my integrity, my willingness to help, my family values and my upbringing, and my perseverance with always wanting to go the extra mile. How these translate into making difficult professional decisions, I absolutely can give you an example that's very personal to me. I'm sure everyone is aware when I was the finance director in the city of Pittsfield, all the department heads were at the discretion of any new administration that came into office. I was always aware that, so I was not reappointed when a new administration came into office. And, that was very difficult. I loved my job. I loved what I did. I was very devoted to it. But I only allowed myself to be upset for, maybe a week, maybe two. And I always look for, there's a silver lining. You have to find the positive in everything. And that's where your core values came in, or at least mine did, and able to say to myself, I picked myself up and said, it wasn't the end of the world. I had my health, I had a roof over my head, I'm going to be fine. And, and I went 9 months without a job, but, I persevered and I made the best of it. And I find that makes you stronger, so it's those values that were instilled in me from my upbringing and my life experiences. So, that's what got me through that.
Thank you. What mistakes have you made in the past and how did you overcome that challenge? I suppose we could focus on maybe your professional career, but if you want to cite a personal one, that's fine too.
Sure. Everybody wants to say, everybody makes mistakes, as we all know that, and you just have to learn from them. Accepting that we're human and it occurs. So from the professional side, one example I can give is I had, because I had a large staff in the city of Pittsfield and I was there for 11 years, obviously there had come plenty of times where I had to hire, fill a position. And I remember a time where I was filling a position and I had quite a bit of reservations about the person that was one of the stronger candidates, but I wasn't feeling that was the right fit for the position. And, I met with the person a few times before I made the decision, and I did move forward with hiring that individual. My gut had told me it was not the right thing to do. It wasn't the right fit. And I didn't listen to my gut. And, unfortunately, I had to make the decision, within I would say it was a year and a half maybe, that I did have to let that individual go. Not an easy decision to do, but what I've learned from, I certainly learned at that point was to trust my gut instincts when making those decisions, that, something was speaking to me there and that I should have listened to that. Again, you always try to find the positives in when you have made a mistake and learn from that experience. Another example from my professional life is at one point in my career, I veered off and decided to go back into the private sector, thinking that it was, time for me to do that. And honestly, I ended up being incredibly bored, believe it or not. I didn't have enough work to keep myself busy. I did my best to reach out to many of the different departments, different managers in this organization, and take on additional roles that were beyond the scope of what my job was and actually were outside of my department. I helped my fellow coworkers. I really tried everything to make it work and love my new path I was on. Unfortunately, I was missing municipal government, and I found myself, that's where my heart lied, in that I knew I was really good at it, and that's what I was passionate about. And you really should stick to what you're good at and what you love. And so I just started, looking again and getting myself back out there and back into municipal. So that really, I don't know if you want a personal one, but those were my professionals.
That's great. Thank you. What would your current colleagues say about your management style?
So I actually, I have my response to that, and then I did actually reach out to a couple of my colleagues in that I'm fair and honest. I expect people to get their jobs done. I am not a micromanager, but I do push them, to, as I said earlier, to think outside the box, to be the best that they can be. And, I believe in being a proactive problem solver. And so I encourage them to, don't just bring me a problem, bring me, what you might want to do for the solution. But on the same hand, when I need to be there to help them, I certainly am, and I will certainly support them. I'm honest and upfront. I think that, but I know that they will absolutely say that I am fair, and they did. But yes, that, I do expect people to do their jobs, but I will help them where needed, and support them where needed as well.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go back to you now for these last couple, but I just wanted to pause for a minute because we're doing really well on time to see if there were any follow-up questions from any of the answers that we received so far from any of the committee members. Okay.
I have one, Joe. I have one.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Susan, do you have any procurement experience? Are you certified in buying stuff and whatnot?
Oh, I can buy, but not certified for especially during a pandemic.
Yes.
All that online shopping everyone did. I oversaw, I have So the answer is yes, I do oversee procurement. I did in Pittsfield and I do in Great Barrington as well. So I am familiar with procurement law, and, you know, obviously from the finance side, I certainly have to make sure everything is following procurement. So yes, I absolutely am familiar.
Okay.
I am not certified though.
Okay, and I have one more question too about grants. What, have you ever written a grant, and what type and for how much? And
So yes, you know, I'm actually thrilled with that question. You know, I actually did not have that opportunity. So again, being the finance person, you know, it's very rare. There's, you know, an occasion that the finance person has a grant, you know, or that there's anything available. You know, all of my background on grants was typically on the other side, managing the grants, making sure we're not overspending, which I have vast experience with. But when I joined Great Barrington, I'd only been there a couple of months, and it was the time the state had developed that community compact initiative and had a lot of grants available. And I had identified that, you know, that Great Barrington, one, we did not have a formal personnel manual. I always think that that's important for new employees as well as for department heads to be able to refer to. And the other thing was there was no formal financial policies in one place as well. And so I applied for 2 grants through the Community Impact Initiative, one for an HR human resources consultant to help write this personnel manual. That was a $20,000 grant. And the other grant was to develop the financial procedures and policies. Now that was, the Department of Revenue that was not a monetary grant. That was where the Department of Revenue would, you know, their technical assistance bureau would step in and meet with you and help establish those. I did receive both of those grants, so I was very excited about that.
okay. I have one more question, and I'll shut up for a minute. What was, for discipline, what was your hardest person or discipline subject that you had to do? What was your hardest decision on a discipline? Have you ever had to really get into a really nasty situation?
A few times, yes. You know, more than you want to. You know, certainly that does go with managing. You know, the good and the bad go together, but you have to make those difficult decisions. Yes, I you know, I'm trying to, the most difficult one. I would say one of the most difficult ones was with a staff member who had always been an exceptional employee, excellent worker, just a really good, valuable employee, but was going down a wrong path. You know, getting, you know, without being too specific about it, but, you know, getting down the path of the negativity and getting caught up in you know, the chatter, you know, the nastiness, so to speak, in when you know, we all know that can occur, you know, and that just stirs up everyone else. So, and then there was, you know, some direct, what's the word? Insubordination. So I had to sit down with that individual. I actually ended up having, you know, because that was a union employee, so, you know, you had to follow the proper procedures for, you know, written disciplinary action. So I did do that on numerous occasions. I actually had to do written disciplinary action. But it was very difficult in that particular case to have to, you know, do it to an employee who I really, you know, valued and was an excellent employee, but needed to be done to help steer back to the correct path.
Okay, guys, anybody else?
Hearing none, we'll go back to you, Bob, for the last 2 for the close.
Okay, Susan, what questions do you have for us?
Sure.
And take all the time you want, because, yeah, and ask all the questions you want.
So one of my questions, I had actually asked it of the search committee, and for their, they were great about giving me their personal viewpoint on it, but really felt this was a question for the select board, and obviously it would have been a question I would have asked anyway of the select board. Can you tell me what the town and you as a board are looking for in your next town manager?
Anyone want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in there, Bob. So, Susan, that's a great question, because I think if you ask the five, select board members here, we all may have different ideas and things like that, but I think there'll be general themes that would be consistent across the board. And, you heard from Mark earlier about the importance of communication with our residents and the services we deliver. And I think that's one area that we have opportunity to improve on, in different areas. But certainly the town manager sets that tone and sets that direction. Not saying it wasn't. We had major issues before, but there's always room for improvement. Is the theme, right? There's always room for improvement. And I think the other part is that when we look at the town of Dalton, as many small communities are, we're challenged with our keeping companies in town or recruiting companies in town to make the town stronger financially at the end of the day. So really, what is that vision, if you will, for like the next 10, 15 years? And what is the master plan to support that vision? We have an aging community, just like a lot of other areas in Berkshire County challenged with. But we also have a very strong youth community as well. So it's like, how do you balance those programs and those strategies for all the residents combined at the end of the day? And certainly, someone that has their eye on the ball, not just for today's operational needs and today's capital needs, but the next 3-5 years out, and help guide the select board into what are those high priority issues and educate us on the importance of that. And I think together we set that direction along with all of our great residents in the town. So those are a couple of different themes, if I was clear in that, but I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else want to respond to that also?
Yeah, Bob, I will.
Okay, John.
Yeah, I think what Joe says is absolutely true, but it's also a generalized, vague statements. I think specifically what the town of Dalton is looking for in a strong candidate is strong financial skills, strong management skills, strong labor negotiating skills, and ability to comply with state and federal regulations. And that's the core of the job. I mean, the rest of it's kind of frosting on the cake, dealing with the communities and dealing with economic development and the master plan and so forth. And Dalton's always been noted for its strong financial team, headed by the town manager, with the assistance of the town accountant, the town treasurer, and there's one other one, but I forget. Anyway, I think that's what the town is looking for.
Thank you.
And particularly in these difficult times there's always a shortage of funds, of course, in any town. But we're particularly distressed because of the recent impact of the new school bonding issue.
Right.
That was, Dalton share ended up approximately $30 million. Has had a significant impact on the tax rate. Expenditures by the select board in the last year have had a significant impact on the tax rate. And the town is going to be looking, particularly at the tax bill they're going to be paying on February 1st, for strong financial leadership. What's our way out of this? If there is a way.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Susan, any other questions?
Well, I think you may have answered a little bit of this. What are the priorities, expectations for the next, or I'm sorry, not the next, the first 3 months, the first 6 months, first 1 year on the job, kind of looking for what your priorities are and expectations?
Well, I honestly believe it's pretty much what John said. The first thing number one, you need a little time to feel out and see what everything is. You need to get acclimated. And we have the big advantage of having our intern manager, who's also our treasurer, and she is nothing but a huge help to the person coming in, because she's got everything down. And basically, yeah, that's what, I mean, we don't expect you to come in here and pick up where Ken left off, that's for sure. Anyone else want to say anything?
Yeah, just to add to that, Susan, just, you asked the 30, 60, 90 days, just like as you make any transition to any business, whether it be municipal government or private sector, is get to know the people, first, 30, 60 days. And just really start off with really good, excellent communication. It's a learning phase, so the more questions is never a dumb question during that phase along the way. So we're all here, not only the select board, but all department heads and the community, whoever we select for our next town manager, we're all around that person to help them be successful and guide them through the way. So it's really learning about Dalton, learning about what's on the list, what makes sense, and guide us through that.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, certainly acclimating and spending the time to develop the relationships with all the department heads, as well as the employees in town government and the select board, as well as citizens. I think that's number one priority. Communication is key, and spending the time is key. Engaging in the budget process, because that is basically going to be happening very soon. That's probably the 3-month plan. And then preparing the town warrant for town meeting, although with COVID, I'm not exactly sure what our plans are there, but I think those 3 things are big priorities.
Understood. I'm very active in, I don't even want to say planning the warrant, of certainly preparing all the financial articles. I do every single one of them every year, the articles and motions for Great Barrington. So very involved in the warrant for town meeting.
Okay. Susan, anything else?
Nope, that was all I had for questions. Thank you.
Okay. You want to take a few minutes for a closing statement?
Sure, thank you. Well, I wanted to thank everyone for their time and the opportunity to meet with all of you and to speak before you. I very much enjoyed our conversation. I think that, as I stated earlier, I can bring a lot to the table with my background, my years of service. I'm very rooted in the community in Berkshire County. I've devoted my whole career here, and just really, look forward to the opportunity.
All right, thank you. If after you leave and stuff, if you find out you have more questions or forgot to tell us something, please reach out through Judy Wagner and just let us know, and we'll get it to the board members and everything. And if you have questions, we'll get you the answers.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you, Ms. Carmen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice to meet you all.
Good night now.
Good night.
You as well. Good night.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, we have, it's now 6:50, so our next candidate is due at 7 o'clock, so we have 10 minutes.
Okay, good, that's good, this is perfect. I just want to update the board. I talked to Tim Zesson today about how we wrap this up after we do the 3 interviews. And everything we do, we're going to have to do an open session, whether we have discussions on individuals, well, we got to do an open session. So I hope everybody's comfortable with that. And my thought process is after next week when we review Mr. Hutchinson, instead of rushing into debating what do we like, what we didn't like about all 3 candidates, maybe we got to take a couple days and come back the following week and actually go through the process, and hopefully we can select a candidate if everybody's in agreement with that. But I would hate just to get done with an interview and then just rush right into stuff, because they may have questions for us that we don't know of coming back and whatnot. So I'm entertaining thoughts on that if that's what you want to do or not.
Bob, yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, are you talking like making a decision or in February?
Yeah, first week
Eighth?
of February.
So our first meeting would be the 8th, and then there's the 22nd, but I think that is possibly a holiday, I'm not sure.
We could meet February, what is it, February 1st? February 1st on a Monday. Because we do Mr. Hutchinson on the 27th.
Hey, Bob,
Yes,
can I make a point of reference here? Mr. Hutchinson's interview is today.
oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking about,
Mr. Flaherty.
yeah. Yes,
So Mr. Hutchinson's interview is today, and I think I heard it was supposed to be at 7, but it was recommended to be at 7:30. So that's what time his interview invite is.
okay,
And Mr. Flaherty is the one that's next week.
okay, I'm sorry, I got them mixed up. I don't know how I did that. Okay, after Mr. Flaherty's interview next week on the 27th,
Yep.
I suggest we break for the weekend and come back on February 1st to do our debate and hopefully make our selection.
Okay, a special meeting of the select board. And the
Yeah,
board.
just like we're doing now, John.
Yep, fine with me.
I'm in support of that. I can make that meeting.
Right. Mark,
I agree also, Bob.
Okay,
that
Joe?
makes sense.
Same here, Bob.
okay, that's what we'll do then. And, so, not to break any rules or regulations, should we just break to 7:30 and come back on?
Yes.
Are we sure now? Is 7:30 and not 7?
It's 7:30, but I might make a suggestion to come in earlier than 7:30.
Yeah.
We can come back at quarter after.
Yeah, maybe he'll be here. Or online, or whatever.
Yeah. And just for the group, I'll monitor the Zoom along the way. If he does come in early, I'll introduce myself and have him hold until we get back. So,
Okay. 7:15, huh?
Okay, we'll take a recess to 7:15. Thank you, everybody.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Sandy.
Hello, my pleasure.
there you go. All right, Mr. Chairman, looks like we're all back.
Okay, we all set to go?
Sandra, you all set on your side?
I am.
Okay, good to go.
Hi, Mr. Hutchinson. I'm Bob Bishop, the chairman of the select board. Would you like to be called Tom, Thomas, or Mr. Hutchinson?
Tom is fine, thanks.
Okay. All right, are you all set, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, we're gonna do this in a series of questions. We got them all broken up, and we'll all take turns asking a series of questions and stuff, and then at the end, you'll have a chance to ask us questions if you have some, okay?
Sure.
Okay, please, on the first one, please take 1 to 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Well, thanks for having me here. I'm sorry we can't meet in person, but these are the times, aren't they?
Yes.
And it's very difficult for all of us, and it must be really difficult to run an interview process, and I applaud you for that. I understand you're running a police chief interview process as well, so busy times there, so good luck with all of that.
Thank you.
I've been town administrator for almost 10 years. Come March, that'll be my 10-year mark. Before that, I worked in government relations for a trade association, and I worked with Congress on farm bills and other legislation, and USDA on the rules for organic farming and manufacturing.
Cool.
And I was very impressed with the public servants that I met as a government relations staffer. And after 12 years, I wanted to change, and had friends in municipal work who said, you ought to try it out. So I applied to, and I was offered the position in Northfield. I was their first town administrator, and I had very little authority. I learned all the basics, but I really couldn't implement any improvements, best practices, things like that. So after 2.5 years, I moved over to Conway, where I have a great deal of authority, pretty much everything that the Dalton's town manager has, except the ability to sign warrants. And I've taken that opportunity to grow and develop my knowledge and skills. So my professional background is all in nonprofit and municipal work. I'm really pleased to be in public service, and I'm looking for a town to settle into for perhaps the rest of my career.
Awesome. I have to say, I read your resume and I'm extremely impressed. So, okay, my next question is, what attracted you to the position of Dalton Town Manager?
Well, again, it's time for me to move. I think it looks like a very well-run town. I looked at your finances. Really impressed with your levels of free cash, your stabilization funds. Really amazing investment in OPEB. You're beating out a lot of towns in that. I want to continue working in Western Massachusetts. A lot of people move east, for their final jobs, but I want to stay out west. And I understand you have a good regional managers group out there, and a good peer support group is an important thing for getting information. Nobody can know everything, and I understand that the Berkshire Managers Group is very supportive and really a great group, a great resource. So those are, internal, external. It looks like a good situation.
Okay. Thank you. Joe, could you show Mr. Hutchinson's picture? I think this is hard to see him.
I just realized I was talking on mute, Bob. Apologies.
Okay.
I can't control what you're seeing on your screen, Bob. But
Okay.
the upper right, you should be able to change your view. You should be able to see speaker view or gallery view.
Okay.
You see that?
I don't see him.
What do you see on your screen, Bob?
Oh, I got him now. Yeah, I got him. Okay, we're set.
Okay.
Okay, Tom. Okay, my last question for now is, what qualities and experience do you have that would convince us that you would be a successful Dalton Town Manager?
Yeah. Well, again, I've worked for about 10 years managing the business of 2 small towns in Massachusetts. I've spoken in detail on articles in front of town meeting. I've learned to be the go-to person for a lot of the ins and outs of town government. I think I have a lot of patience, and I'm willing certainly to go the extra mile to get consensus or agreement on a plan or a project. I appreciate good preparation, because there's nothing worse than having a a project move forward and then to run into a barrier that could have been foreseen and taken care of and have to go back and cover that. So I think I'm pretty thorough in that sense, and especially in getting consensus and moving forward, or at least if the select board really wants something to happen, at least reducing objections to it by presenting good factual arguments. My experience working at a business association has informed me in creating a helpful environment for the business community, stability, knowing what's coming, making sure they know about planning board initiatives, things like that. I have created a capital improvements planning committee and a personnel committee, and neither of which Conway had when I moved there. They had both earlier, but they've blown up over disagreements, and I managed to reconstruct them. So doing some structural organizing in town, I've been able to get that done. Conway's not a poor town. It's relatively well off, but it's got a small budget, so there aren't a lot of resources. And I think I figured out how to get as much done with fewer resources as I can, being realistic about that. Here's what we can do, here's what we can't do. And being able to express that and really letting people know why things are decided the way they're decided. Even if somebody's disappointed, I like them at least to think that it was a well thought out, rational decision. So those are some of my I think more useful traits for any town, really.
Okay. All right, Joe, you are up next.
Great. Hi, Tom. It's Joe Diver, Vice Chair of the Select Board, and been a resident of Dalton for about 15 years. And my day job is working at Bay State Health, leading their digital health strategy, and I've been on the Select Board for over a year. So it's a great community out here. So I have a few questions for you.
Yeah.
And you hit on a little bit about this already, but go into a little bit more detail. So just describe your experience in managing the town budgets and the capital projects. And you did mention the capital planning committee. So if you can expand upon the purpose of that, that would be great. And then also just touch on your bidding experience as a procurement officer.
Yeah, sure. I've presented balanced preliminary budgets every year I've been in Conway, starting with FY15. And I produce a document. You can, if any of you are on the LinkedIn networking site, I have the last budget up there. So that's something you can see that I've put out. I've developed that over time. And it's really an educational document. And I based it on the Government Finance Officials Association template, though Conway doesn't use all the things that they use. We don't have a glossary, we don't have a statistical appendix. It's a little bit simpler than that, but we do cover all the departments, all the spending, and I do a little financial analysis saying where the town is and why and where we'd like to go. Along with that, I put out an Excel sheet that has all of the operating budget totals and that for the town meeting vote, as well as all of the money articles in town meeting, with all of the other items that make up the overall budget. And that's just it's a single sheet. It's actually 4 tabs, but mostly it's just it's a single sheet, and that's been very useful. You can use it to tweak assumptions and see what happens, with the projected tax rate. You never know the tax rate till the next year, but it's good to see, how much spending leads to relatively what increases, that sort of thing. So that's been good, and I developed that myself. The major capital project we have now is a 2-phase highway facility. We've done a shed, 10-bay shed, cold, not heated, for trucks and equipment. And we're in the process of building a maintenance building, 2-bay. Maintenance bay, and first time the highway department has had something like that. So that's where we are with the major capital project. I also worked closely with the treasurer collector to implement the recommendation of the Department of Revenue's management study that they did just before I moved in, and we've ticked off all the improvements of those that we're going to tick off. So that's basic. I can go into more detail on any part of that if you like. Budgets, capital, major capital project. We borrowed for it. We tried to borrow a few years ago. The town didn't like the cost. We thought we had taken everything possible out of the project. We took some more things out of the project, got the stabilization fund up that we were funding it from, and brought the borrowing down, and it passed and moved forward. So that was good to have that success.
Or the financial consensus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of meetings to persuade people. And you also asked about bidding, right? So most recently I bid a town hall cupola repair project. It was a Community Preservation Act project. And I did that as a request for proposals. And it presented some interesting difficulties because the person who proposed it and wanted it done was not particularly interested in helping me out on the scope of the project. So that was an interesting challenge for me that I had to deal with. But we got a good scope, and we bid it, and then everything kind of fell into place once the contractor was in. Any adjustments we had to make were really easy. We didn't even need any change orders. There was no change in cost to some of the things that we wanted. It was just a different way of doing it. So that was the most recent project that I bid out. I also did a few years ago, I did an RFP for grounds maintenance that was mowing and landscaping for the whole town. Sealed bids, a number of bidders, and there I got the Parks and Rec Committee to be involved in the scope. Smaller projects before that, I actually did an RFP for a human resources review. Didn't really need to do it, but I find that coming out with a written scope, especially, even if you're asking for quotes, a written scope is essential, and it's got to be exactly what you want, because that gives you a successful project. So that's what I've come to focus on. Is it's all about the scope and the funding, but the scope is just absolutely essential to get right the first time, because you don't want a lot of change orders coming in when you have limited funding. We do other projects. We use state contracts for highway, police, fire vehicles, and equipment. Not a lot, but a fair amount, and I'm comfortable with the process.
Okay, thank you. What is your experience in developing and executing a master plan, and how do you coordinate those resources?
Yeah, well, Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81D, gives the authority to produce the master plan for the purposes of state funding of things to the planning board. In Conway, the planning board is very keenly aware of that and owns the process. That said, I'm aware of what makes up, there's, 8 or 9 chapters that are required. And often, your regional planning agency, your Berkshire Regional Planning Commission would assist in that they probably have direct local technical assistance funds that the town can just say, please help us with our master plan. One suggestion that I heard that I've given to the Conway Planning Board, they haven't taken it yet. They have some major projects underway right now that they want to take care of first, but doing a couple of chapters a year, rather than trying to do the whole thing at once, I think is a really good idea, because it gives you a chance to refresh things, and it's a more constant level of work, so that there's more attention given to the chapters that you're working on that particular year. So I'm not a planner. I do have experience. I work with planners. Matter of fact, earlier this evening I was on a Franklin Regional Planning Board Zoom call, going over mainly transportation issues. There's still hope for the east-west rail corridor. We'll see. Some of the options look okay for going out to Pittsfield. But I'm not a planner. I do understand the process, and I think it would be perfectly possible to get, if the planning board is not asserting ownership over the process, it's probably pretty easy to bring the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission in and have them work with the planning board and me, and I know you have an economic development group, getting all of the stakeholders involved and figuring out what the schedule is for working on the different chapters of the plan. And again, I think it's best as an ongoing process rather than one lump and then forgetting about it for 5 years.
Good. Excellent, thank you. Last one I have for you, Tom, is, and you touched on this a lot in your responses, so this may be a duplicate, and sorry, but I'll ask the question and we can kind of talk through it. Please describe your approach with working with local, state, and federal agencies to augment town resources required to achieve goals, such as, think of that as what is your strategy for applying for grants, leveraging the Fed dollars that are available.
Yes. There are some grants that are best done through, again, the Regional Planning Agency. If you're doing any water quality 319 grants, hazard mitigation plans and open space plans, brownfields grants, often the Regional Planning Agency does regional funding, and if you work with them, they can put you into something that they're doing. So first, best to take advantage of the people who are, out there doing the work for you when you can. I worked with FEMA recently. Because we have a good hazard mitigation plan that included some work on a road that we want to shore up and change the drainage for. We've applied for a hazard mitigation plan. A pre-disaster mitigation grant for that. And that we got town meeting funding for design, and they're the engineer. We have GZA, and the engineer, that's all they do is put engineering words into grants and do them for the town. There are a number of kinds of grants that are a lot easier than that. There's You have Maya, I believe, for your insurance association, Mass Interlocal Insurance Association. They have a number of grants, and we've gotten, I think, 5 grants since I've been there for electronic road signs. We've got backup cameras for highway trucks. We've got a trailer with emergency equipment. We've got additional emergency equipment. We just got money for an ultraviolet disinfectant system for the Conway Grammar School. So those are pretty good to get. Your emergency management planning grants, those are a gimme from MEMA, $5,000, you know, smaller, but you know, you apply for them and you can get laptops or furniture for your emergency operations center, and after a year, those can turn over to the town and you can get another one through the emergency management planning grant. Probably whoever's running that for you, your emergency management director is getting equipment for police and fire and maybe the emergency operations center, maybe some radios, that sort of thing. We got Go Kits for our emergency operations center through that. We've gotten a lot of community compact grants. Are you a community compact community?
We are, yeah.
Yeah, so those just came out January 15th. You know, there's the best practices. We've done a number of those. HR studies. We did one on IT. And I think we did 2 with HR. And then there's a separate IT grant for larger projects, which is much more competitive. We've applied for that and not gotten it. And you know, there are Mass Works grants. We have not been successful with Mass Works recently. There's a STRAP component to that, you know, Small Town Road Assistance Program, and that gives $1 million to small towns for towns of under 10,000, up to $1 million for a road project. But you know, we've been putting one in for 3 years, and we had a call with them this year. I got the highway director to come in and talk with them and say, okay, what's wrong with our grant? And they said, oh, we just need numbers, you know, like how many accidents that your road has caused, and how much you spend on police details, you know, detouring people around, and how long it takes your ambulance to go a different way because it actually can't get through the road. And we realized that our project is actually not that dire compared to others. So those are very competitive grants. I think $7 million got doled out this last grant for all the towns under 10,000 in the Commonwealth. So we have not been successful with Mass Works. For the other part of it, it's also competitive, and you have to have an economic development benefit with an identified partner. Excuse me. So some pluses, some minuses. I think that's pretty much what I have to say about that.
That was great. Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate the details.
One more.
Yep.
One more. Mass Office on Disability. You can get some great grants for accessibility. First for planning and assessment, and then implementation. You have to do the planning first. Relatively, you know, $10,000, $15,000, something like that. But implementation can be more. But again, the more expensive, the more competitive.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Tom. Tom, I'm going to move to Mr. Boyle now for his questions.
Welcome, Mr. Hutchinson. We appreciate you spending the evenings with us. And you're not here, but we're all here by Zoom. And I guess that's what we have to do these days. If I could just bootleg Joe's question for where you left off with the disability grants that are available, would that be up to and including a potential elevator?
Yes. As a matter of fact, that's what we, well, I have not applied for it because there is not consensus yet about the redevelopment of our town hall. So,
Okay.
But
No,
that,
not far
that is
enough.
absolutely possible.
Okay. That wasn't on my script, so I strayed a little bit, but that's a vital concern in our town, disability access to the town hall. All right, now,
As it is in a lot of places.
yeah. Could you describe your approach to managing staff and department heads, and what practices have you put in place to assure accountability?
I treat all employees as individuals and start off from a place of complete respect. I assume that if they're there, they're doing their job, and then if I hear something's wrong, I try to work with them as necessary. I do prefer a collaborative, collegial approach, and I've been creative when staff have not worked out. You know, everybody is different. One person I have to spend a fair amount of time with every week, reviewing the work, doing a little bit of coaching. Another's fully professional, highly competent department head. We just interact as peers. He does his job, I do mine. Everything works smoothly. Another's between the two. So we have a rapport, so he knows he can come to me if he has a problem, and we'll work on it together. If an issue arises, I talk either with the employee or with the department head. Sometimes department heads want to work more directly with their direct reports. Sometimes they want me to come in and help, so that's fine. The thing to do is to identify what the problem is, identify what needs to be done to fix it, and have a plan for fixing it with a timeline. So that's what you need for accountability. And the job is always to bring people into their job, to have them do their job well. It's very rare that somebody, you know, takes some kind of turn and becomes, you know, unmanageable and doesn't do work and needs to be cut loose. Mostly people have some kind of problem. You find out what it is, you find out how it's affecting their work, you see whether or not it can work out, you come up with a plan. So that's what you know, collaborative approaches work better, I think, in the long term. And you know, make sure you confer with whoever you need to make sure that your perception of the problem is right, and that your identification of the steps needed to address it is right. So that's good, but there's you know, I think people understand the nature of their jobs, and they understand if they're not doing well. They will know that. And so it's not that hard to, you don't see a lot of people saying, no, I actually did that, when it's perfectly clear that they didn't, or that or the other way around. So then, you know, what happens if things don't work out? Well, I have, in my current position, I've led 2 staff members to resign and 1 to sign a last chance agreement. It's always better, you know, if things aren't working out, to get somebody to resign. You know, you don't want to generate ill will even in the process of letting somebody go. So if you just say, look, it's really not working out, do you really want us to, you know, go through a detailed, you know, intrusive evaluation and, you know, have our eyes on you all the time, or maybe it's time for you to move on. So a couple of times that's happened and they have resigned. And as I say, we've gotten to the point of a last chance agreement with 1 staff member in my current position. Also had one of those in Northfield, and there it's simple. You know, they either straighten out or they don't. So it's really hard to hide in a small town if you're not doing your job, because everyone really is essential to do what they they, are supposed to do. So if you're not doing it, it's usually noticeable pretty quickly to somebody. And I would hope I would hear about that. That's, sometimes that's a different problem. But I always want to do what's, in the best interest of the town. And sometimes that means individuals have to move on. Sometimes it just means that they need a little more clarity in how much discipline they need to do their job.
Okay. I have one additional question, Mr. Hutchinson.
Yeah.
Okay, as soon as I gotta find it here. Can you describe your role with labor relations? We noted in your resume that you have experience negotiating contracts. Can you describe the types of unions, their number of members in their unions, and have you, this is a multiple phase question, and have you involved with negotiating personal employment contracts with such employees as police chief, highway superintendent, sergeants of police, highway foreman? And can you just give us an overview of your labor relations negotiations history?
Yes, I have not had the pleasure of negotiating an employee contract. I think it's a great thing when a town has them. Unfortunately, I'm the only contracted employee in Conway. I think they're very useful. They're good. They provide clear expectations. They should provide clear expectations. There are I've never asked for a lot of perks, and I've never expected many, but they can be useful if the person's asking for too much money. If you don't want to throw that onto the town budget and the here I'm telling you how to negotiate against me if you choose me here. If you don't want to pay a lot of money, because it not only affects the immediate budget, but it also gets added onto your OPEB costs in the end. So if there's a problem with that, especially if there's a general problem with that, perks that don't go directly into the salary line can be very useful for helping that. For other unions, I smiled earlier because the first union, there was a police union in Northfield that had 2 members, and it was kind of unfortunate because they kind of felt compelled to form one because there was some disputes within the town, and there were questions as to whether or not there could be administrative pressure for them to leave, and they didn't want to. So they felt they had to form a union. And so I was in on the beginning of that one. That was the first one. And I had David Jenkins from Kopelman and Page. I think he's retired now, but he was just great. He'd been on the other side of the table for a long time. And gave me a lot of pointers, and I also saw his negotiating style. There was one point when they kind of flagged in their presentation, and he kind of picked up the ball and went with it, and then he controlled the meeting from that point on. So that was really useful. Little things like that I've noticed. What I worked on most recently was the teachers union and the instructional assistants union for both the town grammar school and the regional high school. So each of them has 2 unions, the teachers and the instructional assistants. I was not the lead negotiator for that. The school district has labor lawyers who they use for that. But I was involved in those negotiations, and I saw a couple of interesting features. One was an outgoing superintendent who who briefed us and said, what I'd really like to do is to try to be honest for once and to really show them to tell them that this is actually what we can afford and see if I can get them to agree with it. And I thought that was a great concept, and she tried it, and it failed. They immediately asked for 3, 3, and 3, and it was it didn't really work out well. That said, one of the things that I've heard about, because I have attended trainings in this sort of thing, is that it's really useful right at the beginning to make sure that everyone on the other side of the table understands municipal finance and what the town can and cannot do and what the effects of certain things are. Because oftentimes people don't understand Proposition 2.5. They don't understand levy limits. They don't understand the constraints that the towns are working under financially. And if you can create that kind of understanding, then they'll know that you're not arguing for something just out of cheapness. That you have real numbers. And it's important to cost out the contracts completely and show how much they actually cost. With teachers especially, they negotiate, say 2, 2, and 2 for a salary rise, but they're also getting step raises. They're also getting, education credits. They're getting longevity credits. So unless you cost all of that out, you don't see the full effect that that's going to have on the budget. So even though I don't have wide and broad experience in negotiating, I do think I'm comfortable with the principles, and I think I would be good to have on your team. And it's always a team that negotiates a contract, never one person. There can be a lead negotiator, but you've got to have, your finance people in there, at least a couple of them, and the town manager and town council. It's a team, always.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Tom, it's Mark Strout. I've been on the select board for about 5.5 years. And when you work in town government, it's a unique position because the residents are a customer and they also are the bosses. We all answer to them. So with that in mind, what is your philosophy and approach with communicating with the town residents?
Yeah, that is a lot of what I do. I believe it is absolutely essential to engage the public and any individual that comes to you. Absolutely, it is their town, and we do work for all of the residents. It can be useful. And I have a completely open door policy. I never shut anybody out. There's one guy who, about the 3rd or 4th time he came in, he said to me, "Oh, I bet you're glad to see me," because every time he came in, he'd yell at me. But that's him. So he came in, and over time, I think I effectively de-escalated his attitude, and we're now on much better speaking terms. He just took up a really defensive attitude. So and he had good points. A lot of it had to do with loose dogs. It can be very useful to make the distinction between, someone comes in and says, "You work for me." Well, yes, you pay your taxes. Who I would work for would be the town as a whole. And it's, I think, a really great concept, because, if you start working for individuals, then you devolve into chaos because everybody wants something different. So I try to articulate to people, yeah, I see what you're talking about and what you're complaining about or what you're concerned about. here's how to address that within the context of what's going on with the town as a whole. Because it's, you know, it's town meeting as a whole that provides direction, spending authority. You know, it's the legislature, it makes the laws, and the executive, you know, carry it out and work with things that come up in between town meetings. And I think that if people understand that that people can have honest disagreements, and if they have faith that you're hearing them, you're listening to them, you understand them, and that you will now have their point of view in mind as you weigh what's in the best interest of the town as a whole, that can produce, I think, really good results. I hope that I can always give people good information. I try to give it to them within 24 hours, 48 hours. Not always possible, but I'll let people know how long it's going to take to get them the information, or hope how long I hope it'll take to get the information. Sometimes, you know, that it takes a serious amount of time, especially when multiple staff have to be consulted about something. So those are sort of the principles that I go by in responding to residents. And of course, I'm sure you're the fellow who's retiring. I think he worked there for almost 20 years. Is that right?
Right.
So no doubt he knew really, really well why things happen, why things don't happen, and how to explain it to various people in town. You know, I believe I could come up to speed, maybe not 20 years worth, but I'd hope to come up to speed pretty quickly in being able to help people out that way.
There's actually,
yeah. Well, one more thing that I did to do that. I started a Citizens Academy in Conway.
I was actually going to ask you that, to explain that to the board.
Yeah, we actually called it a town academy because people wanted to make sure that people, even if people weren't citizens, they would feel welcome. But you know, they kind of came from the police citizens academy, where they would, you know, show you how the police department works, that kind of thing. But if you broaden that out to the whole town, we had 7 weeks over the fall of 2019. We did not try to do it this year over Zoom. And we had great attendance, a dozen people average who were not presenters at each of those meetings. That was more than I expected. And we had different department heads come in and talk to people about what their budgets are, what their general scope of work is, what they did over the last year, what they were doing now, what they were planning to do over the next year. And I did say their budgets. So all of their, not just the bottom line, but their sub-accounts were up there on the screen, and everybody saw, you know, what they spent for various things within their department. So that was a great exercise in transparency, which I think builds confidence in, you know, people knowing where their tax money is going. And then, you know, they met the people. They met the highway staff. They met the police chief and the fire chief and the ambulance director. They met, you know, the people who work for them, and were able to, you know, put faces to names and you know, I think probably feel a little bit more about approaching them if they ran into them at the dump or transfer station, or, you know. So we got out a lot of good information. I did a whole presentation on the overall budget and how the budget process works, and the assessors did one on why people are getting taxed so much, and also on our GIS system. We have a good computer map of the town, which is up on our front page, and people can look and see what lots sold for and things like that. So getting that kind of information out to people, I think was really helpful. I said all along, my goal was to produce better arguments at town meeting. People are going to argue, but I want them to have good arguments. I want them to have solid arguments based on facts, and get to what is your difference of opinion here. Let's understand what the issues are so we can take that into account for future plans. Always better, and it can take some of the rancor out if people are working from the same budget numbers, and they understand what's going on. So that was the goal. I think we accomplished a lot. We got a new finance committee member out of it. We also put down volunteer sheets on every chair at every meeting. So it was a recruiting effort too.
For the second question, how do you communicate with elected town officials and appointed committee volunteers?
Early and often. Communication is the thing. And even with communication, sometimes things don't work out, but without it, they are assured to fail. I communicate, well, we don't have social media accounts in Conway. We don't have a Facebook account, certainly don't have Twitter. But the website's fairly active in getting the major town events out there in people's living rooms if they care to look. And we have a good calendar. It's not the official calendar, but it's a good calendar. And it includes things that are not, strictly speaking, town events, private organizations and things like that as well. Again, it's really essential that people have their questions answered as fully as possible, as quickly as possible. It shows good faith, for one thing, and that generates goodwill. If people understand something, they might not like it, but at least they'll understand why you're doing it, and that can, it can just generate a more harmonious environment. It's early and often, and as much information as people want. And I'll email with elected officials. Somebody on the board likes texts, somebody likes emails, somebody likes phone calls. Whatever it is, you gotta reach people how they can be reached. So if somebody calls me up, I'll get a call back. If somebody emails me, they'll get an email back.
Thank you, Tom.
Hi, Tom. My name is Dan Esco. I've been on the board for all of 6.5 months.
Well done. Congratulations.
I also serve on the planning board. Been on the planning board for 5 years now. I've been a resident of the town of Dalton for 12 years. Just have a few questions. What core values do you rely on when facing difficult professional decisions on the job? And if you can give an example of that.
Yeah. I've already mentioned acting on behalf of the town as a whole. The chief administrative officer, town manager in your case, kind of has a unique perspective in seeing the activities of all of the boards and committees and all of the departments, and getting a sense for where there might be stress, where there might be not. So it's always important to act in whatever is in the best interest of the whole town. Now, it's up to the select board to define what that is. That's part of the setting the policy. You know, this is what we see as in the best interest of the whole town because of A, B, and C. And then I can communicate that to the people who need to hear that. So that's the first. And then the town manager is where the responsibility lies for the teamwork in town, because the town is a whole organism, but so is the staff, and everybody has to be able to work with everybody else, and that starts at the top. So being open, transparent, personal and professional integrity, and accountability, taking responsibility, that's got to start at the top. And so those are my my core values. The teamwork one is just incredibly essential. That can get you through some really rough times if everybody's working together. That's there's a especially where people work together over a number of years. There's a sense of esprit de corps, shall we say, a spirit of working together that is really important to foster. So that's a good one. And unless people are acting honestly and with integrity, the teamwork isn't going to be all that effective. But so people, it should go without saying that people are honest and working with integrity, but people are also people. So always good to make people conscious of that as a goal. And an example, well, a couple, for teamwork, I've gone the extra mile to do things that weren't necessarily something I had to do in order to make something easy for somebody else. It's really no skin off my nose. One of my favorite examples is that we have a treasurer and an assistant treasurer, and they have a bathroom right off their working space, and the chain to the drain in the tank broke, and I just went in and fixed it. Something needs to be done, you got to do it, and it took 2 minutes, and it was easy, and they didn't want to do it, but it was ruining their day. So that's going the extra mile for somebody else. That's how I did it. I replace the water jugs in the cooler. I don't demand that the custodian do that. I'm not going to wait around if I want a drink of water to change the water jug. I even put some linseed oil and turpentine on one of the door jambs because I noticed it was really dry and in danger of decaying a little bit too much. So I brought in some of that once, and rather than make the highway boss, who's responsible for building maintenance, rather than pulling him off the road, I took 5 minutes and did that. So going the extra mile for teamwork, I think that's a good way to get that done. And sort of on a higher level, for working in the town's best interests, we now have a large solar array going into town. And the way that it's going in, some of the residents are interpreting that as not meeting the planning board's conditions. And some people are saying, well, it's a great thing that we have this, we need the money, you know, who cares? And I'm saying, well, if that's what it says, then the town has entered in, you know, the town is responsible for this, and we need to determine whether or not it meets the conditions of the planning board, because if it doesn't, people have a legitimate complaint to make. So depending on who I'm talking to, I can advocate both sides of that question to try to get them to a common point. So that's trying to get people to a consensus, one in which everybody can agree that something is, or that whatever ends up being done about this is going to be, if not perfect, satisfactory. So those are a couple of the ways that I put that, sort of trying to get that larger perspective into people's minds. No, you can't just blow off somebody because you happen to like this project. And, you know, as we need to work for the whole town, and that includes this resident who's in a butter who has a problem. And that's one way that I've tried to bring people up into a larger perspective and see things, you know, the project as a whole.
Excellent, thank you. Next question. Can you give us an example of a mistake you've made in the past and what you did to overcome, and maybe what you learned from that? It could be professional, could be personal, whatever you choose.
Yeah, I think my greatest mistakes have been in not doing communication well enough, not making sure that all stakeholders were consulted before proposing that the select board move forward on something, and having somebody come back and say, how can you possibly do that? You know, I try to prepare as best I can, but sometimes you miss something, and that, you know, those are particularly those hurt more, because you know they could have been avoided easily, but you know, you know, something slips your mind and you don't give somebody the phone call, and then they're calling up to complain. So that happens, not particularly frequently, but I hate it when it does. So I think I've learned to be extra careful and really try to be conscious about bringing everybody into the loop as early as possible with any decision that might affect them. Then, you know, if they're not interested, I can drop them out of the loop, but at least you can show that you tried. I will, in the spirit of honesty, true confession, and humility, mention that I once put a contracted service for $5,000 into a budget line for the annual town meeting warrant, not realizing that another body had included it in their budget as well. So we ended up double charging the town for a $5,000 contract. And you know, that's a professional mistake, no doubt about it. Shouldn't have happened. Thank God it wasn't all that much money. But that has certainly made me pay more attention to my numbers.
Okay, thank you, Tom. And finally, what would your current colleagues say about your management style?
I think this reflects a little bit back on what I said before about how I work with people. I think different people would have different answers. You know, I hope that they all would say that I was supportive and that I tried to help them do their best. For some of them, that might mean not managing them much at all. The less he manages me, the better, you know. And, you know, I would say that for some of our senior public safety officials, they don't need my management. So my management style is hands-off as far as that's concerned. It doesn't do me any good to try to involve myself into areas which are not my area of expertise. Other people who might be in need of more management, I would hope that they would think that I was, again, supportive of their professional development, supportive of them getting resources if they need them. The productivity of our highway department zoomed when we got a clerk for 8 hours a week. The communication was hugely improved. The highway boss was able to do everything that he needed to do and more because all of a sudden somebody with some more technical skills was around to help with things. And so helping people get what they need to do their job, I hope that they would recognize that that's what I've been trying to do. Some of them need more management than others, you know, and again, I think all that I would hope is that they would feel supported, and therefore appreciative of my interactions with them. I try to give people the resources they need to do their jobs the best that they can, and I think that they recognize and appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom, it's back to me. Does anybody have any questions for Tom? Any other?
No, I just want to comment, Tom. I just appreciate the detailed answers there throughout, and some very interesting things you brought up, the Citizens Academy, and certainly, you know, getting creative with the resources. So appreciate that expertise and that feedback. But that's just general comments, Mr. Chairman. But no other questions from me.
John, do you have any?
Yeah, just a quick question. Tom, how big is the population of Connolly?
It's about 1,900 now, so substantially smaller than Dalton. I look at this as a step up, you know, and I'm ready to take that step. I think that the you know, people might think that it would be you know, some more level of difficulty. What I've come to understand is that the difficulty comes more around the degree of complexity of the town. I had an earlier concern. I noticed you have public water and sewer for at least part of the town, and I did work in Northfield that had its a wastewater treatment plant. But I was told that those are not run by the town. So that takes a tremendous amount of complexity out of the position. So it's not so much the size of the town, it's the complexity of its operations. And from what I've seen, the complexity is something that would be manageable. And I'd appreciate the opportunity to up my game, as they say these days.
I might point out also, in addition to having no sewer treatment plant and having no water distribution system that the town manager is responsible for, we also have a regional school district from kindergarten K through 12. And except for general oversight, the town manager has we don't have any hands-on management. As you may have had in, you noted you had a grammar school in Conway. So that was kind of, you were responsible for that as a management function. Also, our recreation facility. We don't manage our own recreation. We have a community recreation association, which does an outstanding job, and we basically lease their services. So there's a lot of non-complicating issues in town, and it was great of you to take note of that. I'm impressed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Tom, I got one quick question. We have a new, fairly new senior center. Have you had any action or involvement working with the seniors? Do you have any ideas of how to help working with the seniors?
Funny you should ask. I would refer you to today's article in the Greenfield Recorder, which was
I didn't read it.
which was a surprise. Yes, it's up for discussion. What we have is a council on aging that provides, well, in non-pandemic times, senior lunches, various programs such as chair yoga, and other clubs and activities for seniors. There has been, they use the town hall. There's a relatively large general purpose room, and they've got a large closet in there, so we don't have a separate building designated as a senior center. And at various times people will ask, well, why don't we join with this neighboring town or that neighboring town or yet a third neighboring town to work with their senior centers? And we haven't felt the need for a new facility. On the other hand, we don't have all of the programs that the other senior centers have. That said, any senior in the Commonwealth can go to programs in any senior center in the Commonwealth. And people often are not aware of that. But it's something that we're going to be working on communicating to the town residents, especially the one who's asking if we can participate in in one of the next towns over, because they have a lot of programs. What we might not be able to do would be to provide transportation, which of course is a major issue for some seniors. So there are extenuating issues involved, but we don't have a senior center as such now.
Yeah, we have all those programs here in Dalton, plus the transportation bus, and we have a great director, and is always trying to get more town. We even have some select board meetings at the senior centers to just get involvement down there. And
that's excellent. Yeah, it's there was one in Northfield, so I'm familiar with what they can do, and that was not a completely full-time director and a definitely part-time assistant, and they did an amazing job of putting programs together and bringing people in. We didn't have our own van, but there was one in a neighboring town that we had an agreement with. So, yeah, it's a great thing, and you know, it's the aging of the populace. It's the silver tsunami. It's something that a lot of towns out here are dealing with. So, kudos to you.
all right, thank you. Anyone else got a question for Tom? Okay, Tom, can you just take a few minutes? What questions do you have for us?
Yeah. How are you guys weathering the pandemic? I noticed you have a number of cases, and you also have a lot of local receipts in your budget. Are you getting hurt financially from this? How are your people doing?
We have Jane Smith is our health agent. She's done a wonderful job reaching out to businesses and stuff, helping them get supplies and stuff. We have gotten grants for PPE. The police department's got a couple good ones. The fire department's got a couple of good ones, and so I do believe we're doing fairly well. And if any, Sandy or Jane wants to join in, that's fine with me. But anyone else want to report to that? John, you got any comments on that, or?
Looks like Jane just took you too. So.
Just to say that the health agent, in conjunction with the Board of Health, has done an outstanding job, as you said, with coordinating with citizens and what's available and information, obviously, and coordinating with the city of Pittsfield, because we are an adjacent community to the city of Pittsfield, so a lot of our problems are common problems. Liaison with them. So she's really has a good. Oh, she's here.
Yep.
Jane, hey.
Go on, John. Go on.
Well, let me introduce you to Mr. Hutchinson. He's a candidate for the select board. Town manager, town of Dalton. Mr. Hutchinson, Jane Smith, and Jane. Why don't you respond to that? Mr. Hutchinson asked how we're standing in view of the COVID pandemic.
Well, we do a lot of correspondence with the businesses. One of the first things that I did when I came in March, but I swear I didn't bring the pandemic with me. But yeah, it's been the communication piece. And so, the Board of Health has always maintained a regulatory role, but I feel like the pandemic has changed the relationship a little bit, and that we're all in it together. We have had a couple places close down, and we're working hard to try to keep that to a minimum, including trying to encourage programs that are mutually beneficial. We do have the school district, and so that's where I was for the beginning of your interview tonight. But I feel like overall the town's doing pretty well. There isn't probably a sector that hasn't been impacted some way by COVID, but our numbers are going down from Christmas and then New Year's, which we knew that there was going to be a bump. We are in red, but we haven't had any cases for the last 3 days. So, we're really hoping that we can continue to bring that down.
Just a few more months and we're through it.
Yeah, but we'll be into a few months. We'll be into our second year, right?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Time to get those vaccines, and you probably saw Berkshire Eagle there, Tom, that, Berkshire Health Systems and Board of Health are trying to coordinate through the county to try and get mass vaccines out into the community. So we'll hopefully see what happens there.
Thank you, Jane. Tom, any other questions?
Any major projects on the horizon? I noticed your debt level is falling. Are you thinking about bringing it back up again or letting it fall further?
But we did with the new school.
Okay.
If I could just respond to that.
Go ahead, Jen.
New projects we are anticipating funded by the federal government, a major reconstruction of what's called Dalton Division Road. It's a major artery in town that divides the city of Pittsfield and Dalton. In fact, the boundary runs right down the middle of the road. And it's going to be close to a $12 million job. So, the construction costs will be picked up by the federal government. But we're responsible for the engineering, and engineering is usually 10% of any construction cost, give or take. And I don't think we've quite figured out how we're going to handle that yet. But the day is coming soon that we're going to have to deal with that issue, because the job is scheduled to be constructed in 2024. Which is short 2.5 years from now. 3 years.
That would be a good Mass Works application.
Well,
Tom,
are you familiar with the concept of each district, Mass Highway Districts, has what they call an MPO? The federal money is funneled. Yes, you're familiar with this?
Yeah, and they have the transportation improvement program.
Yeah. Right. Well, the TIP is an advisory board which advises the MPO, and they authorize and fund the projects. The federal money is funded through this MPO TIP group, and they've already approved it. They funded it. It's funded, but we're going to have to pay for the engineering in the not too distant future, that could be $1 million. That's
Yeah.
a big number. Well, what you've done with the school in recent years.
Yeah, it sounds like that could be borrowing.
Now, we haven't really discussed it. Yes, it could be another debt exclusion or
Yeah.
something of that nature.
And Tom, just a quick introduction to Dan Filia, who's on the call, who's Director of Emergency Management and Traffic Commission.
Dan, do you want to say
Oh,
anything?
man.
First off, thank you for taking the time to meet with the town officials tonight. I've really enjoyed listening to the candidates. We have applied to MassWorks for money for that program, and we also were denied. We had a meeting this afternoon, and the reasons were discussed why we did not get the funding. And very positive meeting where they made suggestions about what we would need to do to improve our chances and encourage us to apply again. The town has already allocated some money for the engineering. It is not enough to fully cover it, and we're working with MassWorks, should be Mass DOT, and a private organization, engineering company, to develop a 25% plan so we can move forward.
Do you have a capital improvements planning committee or a capital plan in place?
Sandy, can you answer that?
So Ken has a 5-year plan, or institute a 5-year plan, and it rotates every year. You know, 1 year falls off, another year comes in, and so I can't tell you the details of that right now, but there is a plan in place for road work, for projects, even an elevator maybe. So
Yeah.
there is something that's developed and certainly can be looked at.
And does that plan,
Committee though, Tom, I think you're asking about a planning committee, capital planning committee?
well, a capital plan, I was trying to get at whether or not the stabilization funds are already committed to particular projects.
We have a capital stabilization fund, and it's growing, and they're not, I don't think anything's committed. Anything that's committed by the capital stabilization fund is already been approved at town meeting. We fund that capital stabilization fund every year with free cash money, and some of it sometimes goes to the paying of a borrowing. It all depends on our position at the time and what our free cash reserves are, and that was something that Ken, I think in that 5-year capital plan, he has what is being used by capital stabilization, what's going to be used by borrowing, and so on. So,
Oh, good.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking of a possible complement to borrowing for the road design.
Yeah, the road design is already a borrowing authorized, $800,000, and it's debt excluded. That was
Sounds
done.
like you might need another 400,000 though.
Right. To be determined.
Yes. Okay.
Another one, just another capital project that's out there is as a result of the community compact IT assessment. So we have an IT project that's been funded through the last town meeting. So upgrade infrastructure, security, et cetera, and moving to the cloud.
Great. I don't
Joe,
want to take up much of your time, but, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, Joe, again, to bootstrap on, we're also currently we're having what's known as a inflow and infiltration study of our sewer system. We have a very extensive sewer system, but it's aging, and groundwater, sump pumps, et cetera, are impacting the flow to our nearby sewer treatment plant, which is located in Pittsfield. And the meters indicate every time it rains, you can watch the needle, it goes up. So we have contracted with an engineering firm, do a study and identify the troublesome areas and need to replace. And it's in I think we've already spent 300,000 on that, and I would anticipate it's going to be an expensive project when they finally make their recommendations on how to deal with this issue. Very expensive.
Good
No
point,
doubt.
Matt. Thanks.
So it's something that would be studied. Do we want to do it in sections over a number of years, or bite the bullet and do it at once? But it's another thing that's on the horizon.
I don't want to keep you too long, but I am interested maybe in just a phrase or two about, especially for the select board. What do you like most about Dalton?
I like the people of Dalton. I like the town atmosphere. We have like somebody said earlier, we have the CRA, which, you know, we have a huge youth program. We have a huge senior program. The town's just great to live in. And then we have like training company that makes U.S. currency here. And we're looking to do, you know, looking to get more and more businesses in here. We have the stationery factory, which is an old crane factory that's been converted into a concert venue, plus he's got a bunch of businesses in there, and it's just a neat town to live in, and it's just, I am very proud to be in this town. So
I moved here about 15 years ago when my kids were 2 and a newborn, from the eastern side of the state, so from south of Boston, and I couldn't have picked a better town. The schools are tremendous, the youth programs are fantastic, the neighbors are fantastic, and the businesses are just great. All throughout the town, very friendly people. Everyone's there to give you a hand or help out along the way. And the services we get from the town are just tremendous. And if there are issues, people are open to have the conversations and address them and figure out how it goes into the overall plan. So, great spot to be.
anyone else?
I would just say it's the people, period. I mean, the residents and the neighbors, and it's just the people, period. Good people in the town of Dalton.
Okay. Any more questions, Tom?
No, thank you.
Okay, can you just take 2 to 3 minutes for a closing statement?
Yeah. I'm kind of closing out my career here, and I'm looking for a good town to work in. I've worked in one where the citizens were not altogether positive, and Conway is one where the citizens are positive. But I am looking for a step up. So Dalton seemed to me to be a really good opportunity, and I would really enjoy being there. And regardless of who you pick, I wish you the best of luck, and I thank you all for being so interested in your town and helping it run. Conway has about 250 volunteer positions, and about 150 people fill those slots.
Yeah.
So it takes tremendous dedication to keep this really unique system of local government alive. New England's the only place that has town meetings in the world, you know. It should be a beacon for the rest of the world for how to get people to come to agreement on how they're going to live their lives. And, you know, it's been a privilege for me to work in Conway. It would be a great privilege for me to work in Dalton. And I wish you all the best, regardless of your decisions. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and best of luck with all your projects, and of course, getting through this pandemic, and all your future endeavors.
And we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And you'll be hearing from us. We got one more interview next week, and then the following Monday, we're going to get together. I think it's February 1st. And that's our plan. We're going to go over the candidates and hopefully make a decision then, okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Good night, Tom.
Good night.
Good job.
Night.
Okay, guys, that's it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, is there a second? Okay, roll call vote. John,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
and Bob, yes. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. Joe, you gonna end the meeting?
I'm gonna end the meeting, yes. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Night all.
Good night.